Back in 2017, I went camping with my cousin Tyler in the Ozark Mountains of Missouri. We weren't after some wild survival trip or anything intense, just a quiet weekend away from the city. Hiking, fishing, sitting around the campfire, roasting marshmallows, the usual stuff cousins do when they want to unwind. We picked a spot not far from an old deer stand Tyler swore had been there since his grandpa's time. It was this rickety wooden tower halfway up a big oak tree, kind of forgotten and weathered. Tyler said it was a good spot for spotting deer, but honestly, I thought it was just some relic left to rot. That first night, after we'd eaten and were just chilling by the fire, I noticed something strange. Up in the trees, right where that deer stand was, there was this weird glint of light. At first, I thought it was a raccoon or some animal's eyes reflecting the firelight, but it didn't blink or move. It just stayed there, staring. I nudged Tyler and pointed it out. He laughed and told me I was seeing things. "It's just a raccoon, man. Eye shine happens all the time." But even as he said it, I wasn't convinced. The glint stayed, unmoving, like something was watching us. Later that night, when we were in the tent, Tyler passed out quickly like usual. I couldn't sleep. The fire was almost out and the woods felt colder than before. Then I heard it. Slow, heavy thumping, like boots climbing down the tree. Thump, thump, thump. Not like an animal, more like a person making deliberate, careful steps. My heart was pounding, and I froze, barely daring to breathe. The sounds got closer to the base of the tree, then stopped. I stayed still, waiting for more, but nothing came. Morning finally came, and I was still on edge. I checked the deer stand, climbing up the creaky ladder. What I saw made my skin crawl. Fresh boot prints on the rungs. Not old, definitely new. And there was a cigarette butt, still warm, lying on the wooden platform. Neither Tyler nor I smoke, so that made no sense. Tyler didn't want to believe me at first. We joked about it and called it paranoia, but when I showed him the cigarette, he got quiet. He mentioned that his grandpa used to tell stories about a man who haunted those woods, someone who lived in the trees or near the deer stand, a local legend no one really believed. I tried to brush it off, but I didn't want to be near that deer stand anymore. The second night was worse. That same glint appeared again, but this time it moved slowly, like shifting along the branches, and the deer stand itself. Sometimes it disappeared for a minute, then popped back up somewhere else. The thumping noises came again, heavier and more frequent, boots pacing the ladder and the platform. I tried telling Tyler, but he just shrugged it off, saying I was imagining things. But I wasn't. Around midnight, I thought I smelled cigarette smoke, faint but unmistakable. Not from our fire, and not something either of us had started. I peeked out of the tent, but there was nothing there. The smell lingered, though. Then I caught a glimpse of a shadow moving just beyond the firelight, slipping behind the trees. That night, I barely slept. I heard light scratches on the tent fabric, like fingernails dragging slowly. I whispered Tyler's name, but there was only silence in reply. At one point, something bumped the tent hard enough to shake it. I swear I saw the silhouette of a figure, standing still in the moonlight. Then it vanished. The next morning, some of our supplies were gone. A pack of snacks, a lighter, a water bottle. Tyler said maybe an animal took them, but I knew better. Someone or something had been there. The cigarette butt was gone this time. By the last night, I was ready to leave, but something kept pulling me back toward the deer stand, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Around midnight, I climbed up the ladder again. No glint, no light, just silence. I looked down and saw the forest floor shrouded in mist. Then I heard it behind me, the slow, deliberate click of a lighter. I spun around, but there was nothing, just the thick smell of cigarette smoke, almost choking. And then I saw him, standing just beyond the tree line, a tall, thin figure with his face hidden beneath a brimmed hat, watching, waiting. I didn't wait. I climbed down as fast as I could, nearly falling. I grabbed Tyler, who was still asleep, and told him we had to go. We packed silently, the forest feeling like a trap closing in on us. Driving away, I kept looking in the rearview mirror, but the man in the deer stand never left my mind. Tyler's grandpa was right. There's something out there, in those woods, something that watches, and it doesn't like visitors.
I used to work summers as a camp counselor in Vermont. It was one of those classic camps, tucked deep in the woods by a big, cold lake. The kind of place that's supposed to be a kid's paradise. We'd spend long days hiking, swimming, canoeing, and then the nights were just as busy. Campfires, ghost stories, that whole routine. I loved it most years, the quiet, the nature, the way the world felt simpler. That summer, 2015, was no different at first. I was in charge of a group of kids aged 10 to 12, and we had the usual mix. Some scared of the dark, others trying to act tough. The camp had several fire rings scattered around the property, numbered for convenience, each with its own feel. Fire Ring 4 was the farthest from the main camp area. It was nestled in a clearing deep in the woods, surrounded by tall pines that blocked out most of the moonlight. Not many groups used it because it felt more isolated, kind of off the beaten path. One of those nights, a big group of us adults decided to stay up late after lights out. We were sitting around Fire Ring 4, just talking quietly, sipping coffee, smoking cigarettes. The kids had been tucked away in their tents for a while, supposed to be asleep, but we needed a break from the noise and chaos of camp. It was peaceful there in the woods. The fire was low but steady, crackling and glowing, casting long, dancing shadows around us. At first, everything was normal. We talked about the day's hikes, upcoming events, camp traditions. A few of us laughed, trying to keep the mood light. The firelight bounced on our faces, and the night air smelled like pine needles and smoke. But then, as the conversation started to fade, I noticed something, just beyond the reach of the firelight. At the edge of the clearing where the trees thickened, I saw movement. Something tall and thin pacing back and forth, slow and deliberate. It was just beyond where we could clearly see, but the outline was unmistakable. A figure, standing maybe 7 or 8 feet tall. The shape was too narrow and elongated to be a kid, and it wasn't moving like an animal. It was pacing, almost restless. I pointed it out quietly to one of the other counselors, but he didn't seem to see it at first. When I nudged him again, it vanished behind a tree. I thought maybe I was just seeing things. The woods play tricks on your eyes at night, after all, but the feeling didn't leave me. We started joking about it. Probably one of the kids trying to sneak out, someone said, or a camp ghost. The last one got a few nervous laughs. Curiosity got the better of me, so I called out into the dark, asking if someone was there, if a kid was messing around. The figure froze, not a twitch, not a blink, just frozen in place like a statue. Then, slowly, it turned. The way it moved wasn't natural, almost gliding, no sound of footsteps, no rustling leaves. It disappeared into the trees. We called out again, louder this time, but there was nothing. No reply, no footsteps, no sounds. Just silence swallowing the woods. We spent the next hour searching around the clearing and the paths leading to the tents, flashlights scanning every tree and bush. Nothing. No sign of anyone or anything. The next morning, the kids swore none of them had left their tents. I asked a few separately, and they all insisted they'd stayed put. Some even said they heard the woods whispering, but didn't see anything. I was trying to convince myself it was just a prank, or my imagination. One of the co-counselors had taken a picture of Fire Ring 4 that night, mostly just as a keepsake. We looked at it together later, and when we zoomed in on the trees behind the fire ring, we saw something. A tall, narrow shape, too tall and thin to be a kid, lurking just behind one of the big pine trunks. It was faint but unmistakable. That picture still haunts me. After that night, nobody wanted to use Fire Ring 4 again. The camp director even marked it off limits for the rest of the summer. Rumors started to spread about strange things in the woods. Whispers from the pines, figures in the shadows. Some kids refused to camp near the lake at all. For me, it was more than rumors. I remember sitting by the fire that night, watching that figure pace just beyond the light, feeling its eyes on us even though I couldn't see a face. The way it moved, so unnatural, so deliberate, like it was waiting for something or someone. I still wonder who or what it was. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see that shape, tall and thin, gliding through the trees, always watching, never blinking. And I wonder if it's still out there, waiting by Fire Ring 4.
It started as a simple camping trip. Just me and my brother heading up into the Cascades, looking to get away from everything. Phones off, no distractions, just the wild and us. We'd done it before a few times, nothing fancy. But this time, we brought a cheap trail cam. Nothing professional, just some budget thing we picked up online to see what kind of wildlife would wander by our campsite at night. We set it up near the trail we camped beside, pointing it towards a small clearing where we thought animals might come through. It wasn't anything special, just the usual dense forest, thick undergrowth, the smell of pine needles and moss. We wanted to catch deer or maybe some raccoons, something typical. The first night was uneventful. We sat by the fire, told stories, cooked some food. The forest was quiet except for the occasional hoot of an owl or the rustle of a squirrel. We went to sleep early, the kind of deep, exhausted sleep you get when you're truly away from the city. The second night was colder. We kept the fire small, not wanting to attract bugs or animals too close. When morning came, we pulled the trail cam and plugged the SD card into my laptop. The first few clips were exactly what we expected. A family of deer wandering through, raccoons rooting in the leaves, a red fox trotting past. Normal stuff. Then we hit the clip from 3:17 a.m. The screen was filled with static. Pure, flickering white noise like the kind you get when a TV can't find a signal. The sound cut out completely. No forest noises, no wind, nothing. Then, almost imperceptible, one frame flashed on the screen. It was a face. Not like any animal or person I'd ever seen. The shape was human-like but wrong. The eyes were huge, way too wide apart, and completely black. The mouth was stretched into this unnatural grin, too wide to be real, showing teeth that looked almost too perfect, too white and too sharp. The skin was pale, almost translucent, like it wasn't quite there. It stared straight into the lens, and I swear it was alive, watching us. I blinked, replayed the clip again and again. It never got clearer. Just that one frame, frozen in the static. We debated if it was some trick of the camera or a glitch in the SD card, maybe a raccoon with some odd reflection. But something about it didn't sit right. It looked like it was deliberately showing itself, like it wanted to be seen. Curiosity and a little bit of unease pulled us back to the trail the next day. We wanted to check the camera itself. When we got there, the trail cam was crushed. Crushed like someone had stomped on it with heavy boots. The plastic was cracked, the lens shattered, the whole thing barely hanging together. Whoever, or whatever, did it was strong. But here's the thing, the SD card, the one that held that creepy footage, it was still inside, completely untouched, not a scratch. We packed up fast. Neither of us said much on the hike back, but I could tell we both felt the same chill creeping up our spines. We weren't sure what we'd caught on that cam. Something unnatural, something not right in those woods. That footage still haunts me. Sometimes, when the lights are off and I'm alone, I see those eyes in my mind, staring back. I never thought I'd be the type to sign up for a winter camping trip. I'm not exactly outdoorsy in the first place, and cold weather, not my thing. But one winter, on a whim, I joined a guided trip in Colorado. It was supposed to be a challenge, a break from the usual. And honestly, at the time, I thought it sounded kinda cool, literally. The group was small, maybe 6 or 7 people plus the guide. Everyone was experienced except me, but the guide assured me I'd be fine as long as I followed the instructions and stayed bundled up. We were camping high in the mountains in a clearing surrounded by pines, dusted with snow. The sky was clear and the stars were sharp and bright, like someone had painted them on a velvet canvas. The first night was cold but manageable. I layered up, zipped my sleeping bag tight, wrapped my insulated liner around me, and still felt snug enough. The kind of cold you expect when you're that far up, bite in the air, but not unbearable. Then the temperature dropped further. That second night, the thermometer on my watch hit 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Not wind chill, actual 0. Everyone hunkered down early, whispering about how tough the night was going to be. I was bundled up, confident I could handle it. But when I woke up, I was freezing. Not just cold in the way you expect after sleeping outdoors. I mean freezing cold, like my skin was brittle, my breath coming out in tiny clouds despite being zipped inside my sleeping bag. I tried to ignore it at first. Maybe my bag had shifted, maybe a layer slipped, but the cold was relentless. I sat up and looked around the inside of my tent. Ice was forming, not just frost, actual ice crystals spreading slowly over the inner walls of the nylon. They glittered faintly in the dim light from my headlamp. I reached out, touched the wall, and it was solid, cold enough to burn. That's when I noticed the fog. It was a thick, dense mist swirling above me inside the tent, just beneath the ceiling. It looked like breath, like the kind of fog you see when you exhale in freezing air. But here's the thing. I wasn't breathing like that. I was zipped in tight. I hadn't moved enough to create that kind of moisture, and the fog wasn't drifting away. It lingered, swirling slowly, unnaturally still in a way that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. When I looked again, the fog was still there. It felt like something was watching from inside that mist, something cold and patient. I wanted to tell someone. I wanted to get out. But the tent was zipped shut, and I was stuck with that freezing, misty presence. The rest of the night dragged on, every second stretching out like a frozen nightmare. My limbs felt numb, my thoughts slowed, like the cold was freezing time itself. Morning finally came. I forced myself out of the tent, stepping into the crisp, white light of dawn. The cold bit at my face but felt normal in comparison to what I'd just experienced. The others were stirring, rubbing sleep from their eyes, packing up. My guide caught me off to the side, eyes steady and unreadable. He asked if I'd been feeling sick. I said no. He nodded slowly and said something I haven't forgotten. Good. It only gets inside the sick ones. I stared at him, confused. He didn't elaborate. Instead, he gave me a tight smile and moved on. I still don't know what he meant by that. I never got sick, not then or after. But every time I think back to that night, the ice inside my tent, the breath-like fog hanging over me, I wonder what exactly came close enough to touch me, and how it chose who to freeze.
I don't even know where to start with this. The whole thing feels like something out of a bad movie, or a nightmare you can't quite wake up from. But it really happened, and it still creeps me out when I think about it. 2 summers ago, my girlfriend and I decided to get away for a weekend. No phones, no internet, just nature. We found this tiny spot near a small lake up in northern Maine. Remote. No cell signal for miles. Just trees, water, and silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. We set up camp not far from the water's edge. The lake was small, almost perfectly still, with dark water that looked like glass reflecting the sky. The sun was beginning to set, casting this golden pink light that made everything look softer, quieter. We were just messing around, having fun, trying to make the most of being off-grid. At one point, I shouted across the lake just to hear the echo. I remember how loud I was. "Hello!" For a moment, nothing. Then, from somewhere far across the water, it came back. "Hello!" We laughed. The kind of laugh that's half surprise, half joy, like your kids again. So I did it again. "You suck." That's when things got weird. The echo didn't come back right away. It paused, just silence. Then slowly, in this low, mocking tone, the echo answered, "You suck." We froze. The hair on my arm stood up. My girlfriend looked at me wide-eyed. We stared across the lake, but there was no one. No movement. No ripple in the water. Nothing. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just the way the sound bounced, or some prank played by the forest. But it felt wrong. Like the lake itself was talking back, but not with a friendly echo. Like it was mocking us, watching us. We didn't say much the rest of the night. Tried to keep the fire going, but it was hard to ignore that voice. Before sunrise, we packed up and left without a word. We never talked about what happened at that lake again. But sometimes, when it's quiet and I'm alone, I can still hear that voice, echoing back, "You suck."
I never really believed in anything supernatural before that night. At least, I didn't really believe, not the way you do after something unexplainable happens to you. But now, I'm not so sure. This happened a couple years ago during a group camping trip in Tennessee, near a place called Big South Fork. It's a beautiful spot, rolling hills, dense forests, a river that cuts through the park like a silver ribbon. We had maybe 8 of us total, all friends or friends of friends. Nothing fancy, just a weekend away from the city. No cell signal, no distractions. We set up camp in this clearing with a fire pit in the center. Jordan, he's kind of the jokester in the group, was proud that he brought exactly the right amount of marshmallows. "The perfect number," he said. One for each person, he claimed, and he was almost smug about it. We all laughed, assuming it was a little joke or a humble brag. As the night went on, we told stories, drank a little, and finally started roasting marshmallows. Everyone grabbed a stick and held their treat over the fire. The sweet smell of caramelizing sugar filled the air, mixing with the smoke and pine needles. When we finished, someone decided to count the sticks. That's when things got weird. There were 9 sticks, one more than the number of people, and the 9th stick was still in the marshmallow bag, clean, untouched. Not a single melted mark on the marshmallow. Perfectly fresh. We joked about a ghost camper who'd joined us for the night. A friendly spirit who wanted a taste. The laughter felt forced, but we all played along. Maybe it was just a mistake. Maybe Jordan's math was off. Nobody took it seriously. But then, around 2 a.m., everything changed. A scream came from one of the tents. We all bolted up, hearts pounding. Someone claimed they saw someone crouched near the fire pit, just sitting there eating a marshmallow. We rushed out. The fire was still smoldering, but no one was there. The marshmallow bag was still there, unopened. And that 9th marshmallow? Still untouched. No one admitted to getting up in the middle of the night. Nobody wanted to say they'd left the tent. That silence stretched on until dawn. The forest felt different after that, like something had slipped into our camp and wasn't ready to leave. We packed up fast and left. We never talked about it again, but sometimes I still wonder who was eating that marshmallow, and more importantly, who was watching us. I never thought camping alone would change me. Not like that, not in the way it did. It was a solo trip, deep in California's redwood forest. I wanted to disconnect, no phone, no internet, just me and the trees. I picked a spot far from the usual trails, somewhere remote. The kind of place where the silence feels thick enough to swallow you whole. The first night was peaceful. The kind of peace that's almost too heavy, like the world is holding its breath. Then I heard it. At first, I thought it was a bird. You know how sometimes a bird call echoes through the forest? A single note, sharp and clear. But this wasn't right. It wasn't just a bird. It was the same exact call, repeated every 15 seconds. Same pitch, same tone, mechanical almost. I sat there, frozen, trying to convince myself it was just an owl or something harmless. After about 10 minutes, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to whistle back, to see if it was some animal responding. Nothing. Dead silence. And then it came again. That same note, but this time it was closer. Closer. I stayed awake all night after that. Flashlight on, eyes darting through the darkness, trying to make sense of it. Around 3 a.m., something big shifted right above me in the canopy. I swung the flashlight upward and caught a glimpse of something moving through the branches. Too fast for any human, too silent. That was it. I didn't wait for dawn. I packed my stuff and hiked 6 miles in the dark, alone. I still don't know what I saw, but I know it wasn't just an animal.
I'm not usually the kind of person to believe in weird stuff. I mean, I like a good ghost story or urban legend as much as the next person, but I never thought I'd be the one living something that felt off, like crossing a line you can't come back from. It happened during a camping trip in Pennsylvania. Nothing fancy, just me and a few friends wanting to get away from the city and spend a weekend in the woods. We found a spot near a clearing with a fire pit, right next to some rocks. The kind of place that looks normal, but somehow holds its own stories. That first night, after the fire died down and everyone was drifting off, I was poking around near the fire pit, trying to find some more dry wood. That's when I saw it. Tucked between 2 jagged rocks was a piece of paper, half burned, with edges charred black, like someone had tried to destroy it, but gave up. I pulled it out carefully and spread it out on a flat stone. It was a hand-drawn map, not like a printed hiking trail map, but something old, primitive. The paper was yellowed and cracked, the ink faded, but still readable. There were trails marked on it, ones I'd never seen before in any guidebook or online. One path caught my eye. Written in shaky letters, almost like a warning, was, "Don't go alone." I showed it to my friends the next morning around the fire. They laughed at first, dared me to take it and follow the trail the map showed. Of course I said yes. The path was faint, barely visible under the undergrowth, but it was there. The woods felt thicker, darker the deeper I walked. Eventually, it led me to something. A moss-covered stone structure, like the remains of a building, swallowed by time and nature. I stepped inside. The air was heavy, silent in a way that felt unnatural, like the forest itself was holding its breath. When I turned to leave, the path was gone. Not just hard to see, it was gone. Every direction I looked was just trees. Nothing but forest. Like I'd stepped into a pocket of somewhere else. Panic started to rise. I ran. Ran until I found a stream. Followed it downstream, hoping it would lead me back to camp. And it did. But the map, the old half-burned map, was gone from my pocket. I swear it was there when I left. I don't know what I found in those woods, or where the trail really led. And I don't know if I ever want to find out.
I still don't know how to explain it. The whole thing doesn't make sense. But it happened, and it changed how I think about, well, reality, I guess. It was 2019. Me and a few friends decided to go glamping near the Appalachian Trail. Not the rough and tumble kind of camping. No sleeping bags on the ground or wrestling with a fire. We went full bougie. Solar lights strung around the tent. A propane stove. Even a cooler with a lock on it. Yeah, a lock. Sounds ridiculous, I know. But we were storing expensive food and beer, wanted to keep the bears out. That first night, everything felt fine. We joked, drank some beers, listened to the forest sounds. But then, around 1:30 a.m. or so, I started hearing it. Whispering. It wasn't loud. More like a faint, almost inaudible murmur, like someone talking just out of earshot. I couldn't make out any words, but it was definitely there. Repetitive, too. Like it was coming from outside the tent. I tried to ignore it. Told myself it was just the wind, or maybe the forest playing tricks on me. But I couldn't shake the feeling. So, I got up and stepped outside. The air was crisp and cold, even for early fall. The camp was silent except for the whispering. I looked over at the cooler, our fancy, locked cooler sitting a few feet from the tent. And that's when I saw it. The cooler was rocking. Slightly, almost imperceptibly, like something inside was trying to push the lid up. I stared, heart pounding, trying to convince myself it was just the breeze. But the lid kept moving. I hesitated. Then, slowly, I unlocked it and pulled it open. What was inside didn't make any sense. Everything was frozen, not just chilled, flash frozen. Ice crystals coated every surface. The beer cans looked like they'd been in a freezer for days. But here's the weird part. The ice packs we had tucked inside, they weren't cold at all. In fact, they were warm. Almost hot. I closed the cooler, locked it again, and went back into the tent. Tried to shake it off, but the whispering followed me. Louder now. No one believed me the next day. They joked about it being a prank or me losing my mind. But we had set up a trail cam to keep an eye out for animals. We checked the footage after the night was over. At around 2 a.m., the camera caught something crouched right in front of the cooler. It was watching the tent. I don't know what it was. Too dark to make out clearly. Too tall and thin for any animal I know. And it didn't move like a person. Just sat there, staring. The whispering? It wasn't the wind, it was something else.
I've told this story a few times. Never the whole thing. Never in one sitting. But maybe it's time. It was the summer of 2018. My friend Zoe and I decided to do a 2-day overnight hike out in Utah. Nothing fancy, just a quick trek through some backcountry trails. Light packs, minimal gear, the kind of thing we'd done before. Just the two of us. The first day was easy, beautiful even. The kind of place that feels like it's barely touched by people. Rocky outcrops, sagebrush, the red earth that just seems to soak up the sun. We talked a lot about life, work, stupid things. We laughed a lot. By the time we set up camp, the sun was dipping low. We made dinner on a small stove, then settled in early. I remember falling asleep to the sound of the wind whispering through the canyons. feeling like nothing could go wrong. The next morning, we packed up quickly. We were heading back to the pickup point where Zoe's car was parked. The plan was simple: hike out, grab the car, and head home. But somewhere along the trail, Zoe realized her phone was missing. She was upset, said she must have dropped it at camp or on the trail, insisted we go back and look. I was tired, ready to get home, but I understood. Phones aren't cheap, and it was the only way we could call for help if anything happened. So I stayed behind at the pickup point while she went back. She said she'd be back in 2 hours. 2 hours turned into 3, then 4. I called her a few times. No answer. The sun was setting when I finally started to get worried. I tried shouting her name down the canyon. The echoes came back empty. Eventually, I called for help. They launched a search. Helicopters, dogs, the works. Camp rangers, sheriffs, volunteers, all out combing the trail and the surrounding cliffs. But there was no sign of her. No footprints, no dropped gear, nothing. It was like she vanished. Days passed. I couldn't sleep, haunted by the silence where her voice should have been. Then, a week after she disappeared, my phone buzzed. A text message from a number. It was just one image, a photo taken from inside the tent, and it was me, asleep. I was alone. I stared at the picture for a long time. The tent was dim, the fabric glowing faintly from the early morning light. There was no indication of who took it. No shadow, no reflection, no hint that anyone else was nearby. Just me. And that was when the fear settled in. She wasn't gone because of an accident. Someone, or something, had been there, watching, waiting. The next few days were a blur. The search continued, but no new leads came in. The rangers said it was probably just a misstep. She'd fallen or gotten lost. But I knew better. I felt it in my bones. Whatever took Zoe, whatever was out there, it didn't want to be found. I tried going back to that campsite alone a few times, but the air felt heavy, like the earth itself was pressing down on me. I could feel eyes watching from the trees, even when no one was there. The whole experience left me different. Every time I close my eyes, I see that photo. Me, asleep, completely unaware that something was right there just out of frame. I don't know what happened to Zoe, but I'm terrified to find out.